So I wanted to delve a little more into this whole inconvenience thing, give a few more perspectives on it. And one of those is like, think of chess. I know I always say 64 squares on a chessboard, but it's 84. I don't know why my mind always goes to 64. But, it's not a big board. There's not a lot of options. Your options are limited in a game of chess. And if you go by mathematics, then it kind of gives you a guardrail on which moves you should make based on the moves the other person should make. So instead of looking at their actions, you're actually looking at the board and figuring out systematically what has worked in the past. If you were to study, chess players and their actions that they make, then you can figure it out mathematically. And so like when we're kids and our parents are constantly yelling at us, you're thinking, well, maybe I can do this. And instead of asking, you're like 4 or 5, instead of asking, you're going to try to go and do it because, you don't, you're still trying to figure out what are the right and wrong questions. Well, can I go to the bathroom? And then eventually it's, well, why are you asking to go to the bathroom? So now you're thinking, well, I had to ask up until this time. Now they're telling me that I don't have to ask, and then somebody else is going to tell me that I have to ask. So it causes a contradiction where you end up feeling like an inconvenience. So when you speak your own opinions, you're often looked at like you're an inconvenience because it doesn't match up with what they think. So now they have to think and explain themselves, and not everybody has the vocabulary or ability to explain what's actually in their head. Like somebody may attempt to explain, but it's going to come out mishmash because they haven't had time to contemplate it. And so they bring it out the only way they can, the language in their head, and the other person's looking at them like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Then you get that look, then you feel like even more of a inconvenience because you can't explain, right? So that connection is often disrupted. Like radio waves that hit a wall and can't go through it while the other person's on the other side waiting to retrieve these waves, and it's like there's that blockage there. That's the inconvenience between the two people in one conversation. If you can't get what I'm saying, then you're going to be like, what are you talking about, man? I don't get what you're saying. So that's an inconvenience to the mind because the mind is trying to figure this out, but it can't. It keeps hitting walls, right? So we often go to the justification that this person just doesn't know what they're talking about. Rather than try to figure it out, we're just saying, well, there's no reason to even listen to this. So that's an inconvenience. And that's what happens with a lot of people, especially as kids. We're taught that we're an inconvenience. We're taught that we should know the right questions. We should know what to ask, when to ask, who to ask. And it's often just easier to try it out, right? But then you end up being an inconvenience if your action that you made was discovered by a person that considers it an inconvenience, and how they're going to drill you about it, make you feel like even more of an inconvenience, and make you think, they're going to make you question next time, should I ask or shouldn't I? Is this going to be a stupid question? Well, there's no such thing as a stupid question, right? But what if a 30-year-old asks you if they can go to the bathroom in their own house? Is that a stupid question? I mean, it's not if there's a gunman that just broke into their house and holding a gun to their head. Well, you're going to start walking up the stairs and chance them shooting you in the back. Well, then I guess it's not a stupid question, is it? It's an inconvenient scenario where you have to do something as stupid as ask if you can use the bathroom in your own damn house. So, like, especially people that are hard set on their religions and they don't question, they're often looking at everyone else as an inconvenience, because to question their own beliefs is to possibly tear down their own house and have to start over from new while they have all these people that have their back. It's like somebody in the mafia, saying, well, I'm out. And then everybody else is like, well, once you're in for good. Or, the only way out is swimming with the fishes. That's inconvenient. But how are you supposed to know that? You're probably not thinking right when you're thinking, well, joining the mafia would give me all these people to have my back. I can have their back, and you can have all these nice things. And, but then your conscience starts getting, getting a hold on you, and that's an inconvenience, because our conscience is a major inconvenience. But without it, we would literally destroy each other. Imagine that. Imagine nobody feeling like an inconvenience, just going after their dopamine. Is that what it would be? Or you'd have these system makers. Like, how would you make a system in a world where nobody felt inconvenient, nobody felt propelled to challenge themselves? Boy, that'd be a weird ass world. Let me tell you. That's one reason I don't really worry about aliens attacking our Earth so much, is because if there are more intelligent beings out there, they probably like to isolate more than we do. Would they feel inconvenient? Who knows? Depends on the alien, depends on their brain structure, and depends on a lot of things. But the point is, if there is a species out there that's more intelligent than us, and, if they can mind read, imagine if we could all mind read. I mean, we'd destroy each other then, because nobody would trust each other, and we would have very valid reason not to trust each other. So, why do we worry about aliens when we can't even deal with our own shit? Well, because aliens is more of a distraction that gives us, hope that there's something out there. And I do believe there's aliens, but do I believe they're more intelligent? Probably not. There would have to be a very complicated structure within their society to be even better than we are, unless, they found a way to manipulate their psychology better than any other species in the universe. And the chances of that, I mean, well, that depends on their psychological abilities. Like, are they able to understand, or do they just go? Do they not overthink? I mean, that would be quite the benefit. But there's also benefits to overthinking as well, is that we see multiple scenarios playing out in multiple ways. You don't want to just look at a scenario and be like, well, this is how it's going to play out, and then it doesn't play out. And you have to start over from scratch, and then you try it again, start over from scratch. I mean, that's not just trial and error. That's error, 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 error. So really, inconvenience, I believe, it has a use. It makes us stop and think about others. Now how we treat that feeling of inconvenience is the power within us. And we're a very, very challenging species, even to ourselves. So the question is, how do we harness that power of not being inconvenient to ourselves? Because a lot of times we feel inconvenient to ourselves because we lack that connection with others. So we feel isolated in this mental space where we're trying to figure out where the problem is. But the problem is, everybody has the same exact problem. Everybody feels inconvenient, so they try to find a way to make themselves convenient. So when they have someone to look up to, they feel less inconvenient.